Welcome to yet another edition of Lib Let Die with me, Lambert Topic.
And me, Mark Oaten.
And the thing I'm really pleased about, Mark, is we've stopped arguing and quibbling about the name. It's a good name.
It is. Anything to do with James Bond in my book is a good thing. And at the moment, I'm your man in Istanbul. So I'm pleased to be here. But I have no Bond girl with me at all.
I think Istanbul's more to do with Taken and Liam Neeson. One of the episodes, I think, is based there. But I'm sure James Bond's been there too. I'll leave the audience shaken but not stirred with that. But honestly, audience, thank you. We had a record viewership recently for one of our episodes. Please keep it coming. Share and like and retweet if you like it. Mark, I have to say I'm truly flattered by the public attention. For years, has been dreaming of this popularity, or is it popularity?
Notoriety, I think, is one way I put it. But actually, I never normally listen to what we say afterwards, but I was actually listening to it in the car. And you know what? I made quite a bit of sense. I wish I could say the same for you, Lembit, but it was actually quite enjoyable at moments.
Narcissism writ large here on Unprecedented TV. Maybe narcissism in the political world as well, not from Donald Trump, but from all the people who thought they should all fly over recently to try to be part of the great big Ukraine peace talks party. I think we should talk about that. What else do you want to cover? There they are. There they are. Oh, they've gone away again. We'll come back to that.
They were in and out of the Oval Office. I think actually they spent slightly less time in the Oval Office than they did on our screen there. A lot of students have had their A-level results out this week, but I'm just going to ask the question, does it actually matter anymore? Are these kind of qualifications really important? I don't want to belittle for a minute the achievement of all of those people that have passed, but actually, are we educating in the right way? I think we should talk about that. And there's another issue, particularly, well, it's 10 years away, at least for me and you, I think, but should over 70-year-olds still be driving? There's talk of some tougher changes for the over 70-year-olds. What else, Lembit?
That'll get some of our presenters angry, potentially. We've got a new show called Full Throttle, which is about drivers' rights. Okay, well, I'll spar with you on that. Football and racism. Ostensibly, there's been another recent example of a football game being stopped because someone's shouting something stupid from the audience. I'm wondering where this ends. Somebody described me as wonky faced on the internet. Is that a hate crime? Let's talk about that. Holidays? Do you ever have holidays? Well, you pretty much live on holiday. I take it you're on holiday now.
I'm on a little break at the moment. Yeah, that is true. I do have holidays. I work and travel a lot, but I do have holidays. So yeah, let's get into that. What kind of holiday do you like? Is it by the pool, by the sea? Is it reading? Is it exploring? What are some of your holiday disasters? And I actually had a first this time. There was a fight on the plane, and that was a British Airways flight as well. But I'll tell you more about that later.
And if we've got time, you like to indulge yourself with the impression that you have time to watch ordinary television. Maybe we'll do that too. But today I'm going to have a film if we're going to do that. I'm not telling you what it is yet. Let's start with the Donald Trump situation. Now, I'm sure a lot of people recently, over the last few weeks, have seen a lot of developments. Even if you're watching on the archive instead of the live version of the show, this is a story that keeps developing. And Donald Trump said, I'm going to make America great again. And he has. He has made it great again because he had half a dozen or more European servants of the people all flying over there. Whatever happened to climate change, global warming, CO2 footprints, flying over there to hold little Zelensky's hand so that he wouldn't be intimidated by the great big bad wolf, Donald Trump. And Donald Trump produced what I think was an absolute blinder. I think we may have a clip about this. Can we watch this?
Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit.
Message to the people of Ukraine as world leaders gather here today. And Russia continues to attack civilians, this time in Kharkiv, killing many.
Is there a just office of peace?
I have to say, Mark, first of all, we saw all that sartorial discussion. We will go into that later on, which really is an interesting contrast point from the absolutely abysmal meeting that Vladimir Zelensky had with Donald Trump last time he was there, and the rather warmer one this time. But then the other thing that I want to talk about maybe in a moment is the abysmal performance of the mainstream media too. But what do you make of the overall theatre that Donald Trump managed to put together, aided and abetted by the bit part players from Europe who weren't really invited, but invited themselves? There's that picture again. Some of them I quite like, but most of them I think are useless.
Look, I mean, the whole thing is quite extraordinary at several levels. What part of me wants to actually say, well, do you know what? For all of his faults, Trump has managed to get peace on the agenda. He's managed to get these individuals round a table in the Oval Office, and he's managed to also bring diplomacy into the public arena. I mean, it's very harsh, it's very real, the words are very, very simple, but a lot of these discussions always used to happen behind doors. We didn't really know what was going on. Now it's very, very open. It's out there in the way he speaks with the media, taking endless questions from journalists, and it's out there in terms of his own social media as well. So there's a huge openness about how these discussions are taking place. That I find extraordinary. The fact that all of the European leaders shot out there immediately because they felt that Zelensky would be bullied by Trump, that I found extraordinary. But then there were moments of pure farce. I mean, the press conference that Trump held, he started getting totally off the issue of the war with Ukraine. He started talking about how he was going to abolish postal votes in American elections. He kept calling Biden the disgraced administration. I mean, it must have been very difficult for some of these other world leaders to not burst into laughter at times. So on the one hand, great work, he's pulled people together. On the other hand, it was farcical, it was comical at times.
You just can't get out of your mindset, Mark. You just can't get out of it. The other way of looking at it, let's not beat around the bush. My way of looking at it is that Donald Trump has done exactly what it said on the tin. He's made America great again. First point, he meets Vladimir Putin, has a great interaction with him, clearly de-escalating the situation. Second point, he's got Vladimir Zelensky on a tight leash. He's on his best behavior, like a naughty schoolboy who's made to sit outside and miss lunch. He comes over and says, thanks very much, and even changes the way he's dressed. And the third and the biggest point, Mark, you might think that this is farce, but the farce is all from Europe and the UK. Why do I say that? Because essentially, Trump wanted to summon Zelensky and give him his instructions. That's what he wanted to do. But the others all ran along. You say it's to help Zelensky. It was to help themselves. They've invested so much in their public image with Zelensky. They want to cash in on it now. And the sycophancy, the licking up to Donald Trump at the end of their meeting, it was sick-making. I laughed my head off. I'm not surprised, because they're just minnows. They're fourth division. Nothing's compared to Donald Trump. And I think that Donald Trump must have been sitting there saying that I really done it. I've really, really got America exactly where I want it to be. Now, that's almost a diametrically opposed impression that you've got. But there's no denying, you can't deny this. Donald Trump has done more in a few weeks to de-escalate and get peace in Ukraine than all those other clowns in that picture, not least Zelensky and Macron and Starmer have done in years.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on this point that he has been able to fast track this process. Nevertheless, he did, of course, say that, you know, he would have this war solved within a day, which was ridiculous comment to make. The people that I am most angry with are not necessarily his European leaders, but it's NATO. I think that NATO has been totally ineffective and has not been able to act on this issue. And yes, the European leaders have created a vacuum, and it's allowed that Trump can step in and fill that void. Is that healthy long-term for international relations to now be so dependent as we are on Trump. I don't think it is. And I think that it's something which Europe needs to have a long, hard look at itself, as does NATO, as does the UN, because I much rather that solving these international wars and divisions is done in a united way amongst countries through formal organizations like NATO and UN, rather than leaving it to the whim of an American president who, albeit I agree, is getting us to the right point this time, but it is dangerous to leave it to one individual like Trump. He is so volatile that, in fact, whilst this time it might work, next time he might not make it work. And that's the risk about putting so much power into one man's hands.
This is why I think you've become a conformist. The reason I say that, Mark, is because however much Donald Trump does, people like you and people like the ones in the picture say, oh, yes, he's done it well this time, but he can't be trusted. Everyone in that conformist cabal was saying, oh, Donald Trump's no good. David Lammy was pretty much libelously offensive about Donald Trump in the past. And here he is being the place to which everyone else scampers so that they can prance around with Vladimir Zelensky and pretend they've had the slightest impact on a peace deal they could have dealt with 2 years ago, but they didn't have the gumption, the intellectual capability, or the will to do it.
Lembit, it's just not healthy. What you're describing is not the way that world peace should be dealt with and managed. It should be done through the global institutions, which in the past have served us well. Talking here about the United Nations, about NATO, about the EU. These are the institutions that should have stepped up. Now we've got a maverick president who, yes, on this occasion is doing things right, but that shouldn't be how world order is kept. It is risky and it's dangerous. And I don't blame Trump. He's grabbed his opportunity. He talks about the fact that he's been able to finish 6 wars in his presidency. I understand that. He wants to make America great. He wants to do this for his own ego, and maybe also because he believes it's the right thing to do. But it is not right that those other institutions have become so weak and underperformed that they've allowed Trump to take this opportunity.
That's the point. It's not his fault, right? Maverick president in the United States or amateur hour in Europe. It's the latter. You just said it in your own words. If we actually had credible, proper, grown-up politicians in Europe, and we have one, Viktor Orban, who's pretty good, and I think Marine Le Pen in France, but if we had them in power, then, and Orban is in power, then Trump would do business with them. But instead, we've got a bunch of fools, totally underqualified idiots in Britain, in France, all over the place. I actually think that the Italian premier is pretty good, but the others are utterly useless. The guy whose name I can't usually even remember in Germany, utterly useless. And they run over because they want to get part of the glory, not because it can make any difference. They want part of the glory, Mark, and it's our fault. Our fault on the continent of Europe, in the UK, and then it's not Trump's fault. He's picking up the pieces. Thank you, Donald.
No, I agree. Lembit, I agree with you. It is our fault. It's those institutions' faults for allowing this to happen. I 100% agree with you there. I mean, it was so bad, so embarrassing as he was going around the table, giving everybody their 20 seconds for their sound bites. That did you notice he forgot to come to Finland? And then he looked up and said, oh, young man, yes, you're very young. You're very good. Now, yes, you're from Finland. You need to say a few words. And the Finnish prime minister said, well, you know, we have an 800-mile border with Russia. That's why I'm here. Look, there were times at which it was just bizarre to see diplomacy done in this kind of way. However, I will happily eat my words if next time we're doing this broadcast, we've seen another positive step towards peace.
And before we move on to the next story, my favorite line, and this isn't exactly what he said, but it was the meaning of it, when Trump said about Keir Starmer, everybody likes Keir, he's a very nice guy, everybody likes him, in the same way that a teacher would say, don't bully the boy in the corner, let him be on your team. And Starmer came across as an absolute nothing in the whole thing. And lo and behold, he comes back to the UK with more carbon dioxide footprint, because that doesn't matter anymore, and says, we're going to have it on the meeting of the coalition of the willing. The coalition of the willing, it did nothing. It was a coalition of the witless or the wilting. So I'll eat my words if the coalition of the willing does something. Ask yourself the question, if it didn't exist, would anything be different? I think there's a 2-letter answer to that, Mark, don't you?
Let's wait and see. Let's hope that what happens next is that there is a tripartite discussion between Zelensky. I was very cross with you last week when you said that Zelensky shouldn't be part of this process. So I'm pleased to see now that it looks as if he and Putin will be getting together. Whether Trump is there or not remains to be seen. But at least Zelensky's voice is being heard. I know you don't like that. We disagree fundamentally around that. But it had to be heard, and it is now being heard.
Let's talk about racism then. This isn't the biggest story, but it's one I find quite irksome because I'm wondering where stupidity ends and intolerance starts. I think we may have a video. The context here is that is it Adam Smith?
It was the Liverpool match which opened the new season on a Friday night. Liverpool versus Bournemouth, fantastic atmosphere. We saw football at its best with the incredibly emotional singing of the Liverpool fans after the sad death of their striker, Jota. And then we saw football at its worst when one of the Bournemouth players was subject to a racist attack. And I think that this clip should explain that.
Received during the game?
Yeah, just totally unacceptable. Kind of been shocked, to be honest, that it happened this day and age. It shouldn't be happening. I mean, I don't know how Ants played on, to be honest, and come up with them goals, and just it's totally unacceptable. And then just if anything, I just feel sorry for Ants in there. You know, it's a little bit down, obviously, and to carry on playing, it's just something needs to be done. And
yeah, that's an interesting view. They're incredibly rich, these footballers. There's no doubt about it. And sometimes I suppose people think because they're super wealthy, there he is, that they don't have those feelings. But I think the ultimate, there are two parts to this. The ultimate revenge was scoring 2 goals. I think that's fantastic. He was probably G'd up by it in the end. But the question is, how much bad commentary should we tolerate? Is there any amount which is acceptable? And I say that because a lot of the audience will be there to let off steam. And I don't have an answer. I'm agnostic on this. I'm genuinely interested in what you think, Mark.
Well, I'm a season ticket holder at Watford, and I sit in the same seat, have done for the last 10 years. And I've noticed a significant change in those. Well, actually, I've been going to those matches for 40 years. A huge change in what is shouted out by the crowd, incidentally, Lambert. We don't call them an audience at football matches. That's what happens at Glyndebourne and at Covent Garden. But we have a crowd, and it can be quite a robust crowd. Look, they shout out really rude stuff to the referee, which I cringe at. There is often, and still is, homophobic chants, crowd shouted out, particularly when a team like Brighton come into town. There is a lot of that shouted at Watford because our president is Elton John. But I have noticed a decrease in the amount of racism shouted out. But it's obviously still taking place. And what's so sad is that we've had this big campaign run by the FA called Kick Out Racism. We've had the whole point of the players at the start of the match taking the knee, but it still goes on. Now, Lembit, what I thought was really interesting about Friday, and it was the first match of the season, was that I haven't seen this happen before. The referee blew the whistle the minute that the player told him what happened. He stopped the match. He called the managers over. He explained what was going on. He wanted to make sure that the police and the stewards were aware of what happened. He raised awareness of this in a live television match. That was a tipping point because they've not stopped a match before, as far as I can remember. Now, is that going to create an additional problem that actually fans who think that a match is not going in their favor might start to chant stuff out in the hope that the match gets stopped? This is a really difficult issue to tackle. It's great that it looks as if the individual involved, to a Liverpool fan, is going to have a lifetime ban from all stadium. We need more of that. We do need, I think, referees to step in and highlight it. But it's just terribly, terribly disappointing that it's still happening in the game.
If he'd said, you're a stupid idiot from, I don't know where the player is from, stupid idiot from Scunthorpe, go back to Scunthorpe, would he have been... would the person who shouted it out been banned? the question I've got is, what is the acceptable list of abusive terms that the crowd, sorry, not the audience, I'll give you that one. I've got no escape from that one. But the crowd, and I'm a Leicester City fan. I actually do follow football. I still made that mistake.
The City,
and they've never,
which City?
Leicester City never played. Has never played Blindborn, by the way. But the fact is, are we going to have a list of acceptable chants and taunts?
Well, I think we already know that there are words and triggers which are unacceptable in day-to-day life, and so they have to transfer over to the terraces. I mean, I feel sorry for the referees, because some of the stuff that is hurled at referees, some of the things that's hurled at the linesmen is horrendous. Interestingly, I was at a match when one of the lines people was a woman, and the crowd were incredibly respectful in those circumstances. And it also seems that when you look at women's football, again, the crowd is really respectful. In fact, the whole of women's football seems to be a much, much better cultural atmosphere. Even amongst the players themselves, you don't see them suddenly surrounding the referee. You don't see them fighting each other. Maybe we've got a lot of lessons that we can learn from the female game, which could transfer over to the men's game, both on and off the pitch. Yeah,
I actually got quite interested in professional female football for personal reasons. Actually, I know somebody who's playing, and the thing I noticed is much more fluid, much less messing about, much less theatre. Now, here's another point, Mark. The women win. They actually won the Euro twice in a row. The female footballers don't hark back to 1966. They hark back to 2025. Well done, women. They certainly passed the flying colours, which might be a good link. I realise we've been indulging ourselves a bit. We better speed up a bit. The other flying colours that were passed were A-level results. And you said at the beginning of the show, you might not be convinced that they're that important anymore.
I'm not. Look, I employ quite a few people, and what am I looking for? I hardly glance at the A-levels that they've got. I hardly glance even at the degree that they've got. Excepting, of course, if I was employing somebody who's going to be a neurosurgeon, then I would want them to have the relevant qualifications. But generally, broadly speaking, for most people that we're trying to employ, we want a set of skills around being able to be bright, articulate, go-getting, engaging, enthusiastic, hardworking. We want a set of skills which means they've got a little bit of nous, a bit of energy. They can catch on quickly. They're able to write decent emails. And actually, I'm beginning to think that school, university isn't teaching those skills anymore, and that I'm less interested, frankly, if they've got a maths A-level or an English A-level. What I want to see is character, personality. I want to see this interview process where I get excited by the person who I'm interviewing. I'm not going to look at their qualifications. And so I'm beginning to doubt whether these qualifications are creating youngsters fit for purpose around the office or the engineering or wherever it is that they're going to be working. That may be controversial, and I'm not sure how you get a qualification in having nous and human skills, but at the moment, I'm not seeing many of it from that particular generation, and it's troubling.
Yeah, I've got a different view. I definitely have a different view to you. My view is that the qualifications are well established as a way of figuring out how good or bad somebody is, and it's not perfect, obviously. And that's
good or bad at what, Gambit? No. How good or bad they are at what?
Right, at maths, English. I would say physics. If you want to go into some.
Tell me what the skill is. What is the skill that they've learned?
Well, in maths, adding up,
something,
working out complex mathematical problems. English. One of the greatest complaints I've had about people I've employed is the decline and fall of their grammatical capability. I was watching the state-sponsored British channel today, and the guy who was talking kept saying, it is going to rain or something. It is raining. He got the tense wrong somehow, and he kept doing it. There's delays. There's lots of delays. And I'm thinking, that's terrible. And then another one of them was saying, this man is being tried for crimes. It's terrible. They used to say you could learn the English language from the BBC. You can't do it anymore.
Sorry, Len, but that's pathetic. These are the issues that don't matter. You could employ somebody who's perfectly grammatically correct, but has zero personality to be able to go and, I don't know, be a journalist or working media, because they've just got no personality, because they're lazy, because they don't understand what hard work is. They may be grammatically correct. And this is my problem. A lot of it is on paper, but we're not teaching our youngsters the ability to work in a proper working environment.
Yeah, but the thing is, my issue with what you've said is that having a good qualification, maths and English, in my view, in many jobs, is a necessary condition. It's not a sufficient condition. It's a necessary one. Now, you and I have had, let's be honest, you and I have had very different experiences of education. I enjoyed it. I come from an academic background. My father was a nuclear physicist. So I like academia. You're not so keen on it. But I put it to you, Mark, one of the reasons this country, the United Kingdom, is such a mess is because we've got such an underqualified government. We've got a deputy prime minister who flunked it educationally at school. And I think she's flunking it politically in government.
So what? You are so elitist.
So what? She works for me. She
That
works
is
for me. The prime minister
ridiculous.
works for me. The deputy prime minister works for me. We pay their salaries. So I don't want to have someone who isn't
I don't give a
qualified for the
damn.
job.
I don't give a damn what qualification. You're just being so elitist. I don't care whether they went to Oxford, Cambridge, or Eton.
Elitist.
If you look at some of the most educated people, and my father was highly educated, but he wasn't practical. He couldn't have run the country. He could perhaps run a Latin seminar. He could speak in Russian. He could speak in Greek, but he wasn't able to do anything practical in terms of business, and certainly not somebody who could run the country. It shouldn't matter what O levels, A levels, or college or university they went. That's not the skill set. And Lembe, if you look, whenever you see these top entrepreneurs, something like the people on the Dragon's Den, I bet you collectively, if you looked at their academic background, it's nil compared to some other people. I'd rather those kind of people were running our country.
I just think that what you said is rubbish. You're talking Alan Sugar. Let's talk about Alan Sugar then. Always the example that's used. If you look at the top paid people in this country, there's a direct proportion between their qualifications and their salaries. Not in every case. Let's talk about the exceptions if you want. But the problem I've got with your attitude is this. If you're right, then everything that the Labour Party told us was nonsense about sending people to university. Everything that the Liberal Democrats were saying is nonsense. The Lib Dems, when you and I stood for the party, we wanted to put more tax on income so that we could improve education. What's the point? Let's save the money from education. If you don't need education, everyone can be like Angela Rayner then. That's fine. Don't need any qualifications. Just do any job you want. Let's just become a communist society where you don't have a meritocracy. That's the problem. You're talking about abandoning meritocracy, and that's why we're in the mess we're in.
It was the wrong policy to set a target of, what was it, 52% of the population should go to university, and then create crazy degrees so they could do them at university. It is absolutely critical that we have education and qualifications. My point is simply this, that we need to remodel what we mean by education and qualifications. I'm a big fan of apprenticeships, going out into the workplace as soon as possible. And that should be a qualification. If you're going to create an A level, create it in actual properly going in, and part of the way in which you're assessed as to whether you've passed that A level is whether you've been able to perform in a day-to-day role in a business, for example. It's not about getting rid of education qualifications, it's changing them so they're more relevant, so that the next generation have the skill set needed to be able to survive in today's world. Currently, I don't think they do.
You contradict yourself. Oh, let's have an apprenticeship. I agree. I totally agree. With retrospect, with the benefit of hindsight, it was the way wrong answer to get rid of polytechnics, because they were vocational. They weren't all this philosophy type degree like I did. They were become a plumber, become an electrician, become a civil engineer. You could do those things in polytechnic, and you didn't have to spend all your time sitting there in the university speakeasy talking about Nietzsche or talking about high politics and so on. I agree with you on that. But the irony, Mark, is I don't think you're disagreeing with me. I actually think you're saying you do need to be qualified, but it doesn't have to be in all the posh stuff. You can be qualified in a career. My problem is that the people who run this country, although weirdly some of them have degrees, don't seem to be qualified at all. And as far as I know, not one of the people on the cabinet has ever run a business. Now, that does not qualify them to be in cabinet. So I would say what we're seeing now, the decline and fall of British politics, is precisely because they're not qualified.
And before we take a break, I know we need to, I agree with you that maybe one of the things we should be looking at is bringing into the cabinet people who are appointed because they've got the skill set. So if we're looking at having somebody in the Treasury working for Rachel Reeves as one of the ministers, bring somebody who's got some banking or finance skills. Similarly, in Wes Streeting's department, bring in somebody that's actually worked in the NHS. This could be potentially a role for the House of Lords if it's going to stay, that we make good, sensible appointments of people that have got those skills and experience, and we bring them into government, because we're expecting too much of our politicians to become experts in the areas when they themselves don't have the skill set for doing it.
I have more to say on this. Maybe we'll do a whole show on it. You're watching Mark Oden and Lembert Hoping on Lib and Let Die. Let's have a quick look at some of the other great programs you'll find here on Unprecedented TV. Welcome back. I think that was put in by our team to calm us down. I'm not sure if you've noticed, Mark, but as the years have gone on, we've got more and more antagonistic towards each other. I thought the opposite was meant to happen when you get old, but something else. I don't know what's wrong with us.
Listen, you bring out the bad in me clearly, Lembit. I don't know. I'm not sure whether getting old makes you milder or not. It means you end up having to go to the loo once in the night. I think it makes you a little bit more angry. Yeah, maybe it makes you more mellow in some areas, but I do find myself getting more and more angry and frustrated at things. I feel, who was that character? Victor Meldrew, wasn't it? Who was always
don't believe it.
I don't believe it. I mean, I feel like saying that every single day. There's a bit of an aspect of this world that we live in that I think, oh my God, how are they doing that?
We're facing persecution because of our age soon, though, Mark, on the roads. Did you see that story?
No.
Yeah, 70-year-olds going to have eyesight tests and all this.
I'm sorry. I thought personally it was something that we'd done.
Just us, yeah. A law just for us. We could be heading that way. I wouldn't.
That's how paranoid I am. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be. Well, I'm 61 now, so it's less than a decade for me. You're a young chick by comparison to me.
60. But 60. Our collective age is 121.
And our collective wisdom is probably 21. But look,
if only.
This is very, very close to a lot of people's hearts because they will have a parent or a grandparent who absolutely will depend on the car to get them around. And it is also a very, very important symbol for old people about independence. It is also a very practical issue because it's not a luxury for many people. With the decline in public transport, lack of buses in rural areas, people absolutely do depend on the car. However, the government have said in what's going to be its most radical review of driving that they're going to bring in more controls, more measures, particularly around the eyesight of those who are over 70. Now, is this a decline of freedom that the government are imposing, or is it a sensible measure to reduce potential accidents? What do you think, Lembit?
You've expressed the intention really well there, Mark, and also the conundrum. Here's the problem. Why limit it to 70? Why not just do an eyesight test for everybody? When I had a pilot's license, which I regularly used, I used to have to do the tests every couple of years, or at least show that I had a reasonable eyesight and everything else. Perfectly understandable. But we now are in a situation where this government, I think because of its authoritarian intent, wants to regulate everything. My answer is, I don't want people with bad eyesight to be on the roads. They endanger my kids, they endanger me, and they endanger themselves. But there's a feeling now that there's an increasing pressure with this and assisted suicide, almost like saying, well, as you get older, you are more of a burden, and maybe we don't want you to drive. And it can wreck a person's life if they lose their license. Now, I will go back to statistics. It's quite a cold answer I'll give you here, Mark. But the reality is, when you're 17 or 20, your reactions are just better. I was a really good, technically very good driver when I was 18, but I rode off my parents' car because my attitude was wrong.
Yeah.
I just thought I was indestructible. Now, when you're 70, your attitude's not wrong. You're not boy racing up and down the street. So my guess is that the real problem still lies in numerical terms with the boy racers who wipe themselves and their three friends in their car out. There's tragedies when parents get a knock on the door from the police and say, I'm afraid your son and three of his friends are all dead. That's the tragedy. At 70, you might have a prang, but you're probably doing it at about 25 miles an hour. And that's what I wrestle with. Interestingly enough, Mark, we probably can't resolve this now, but on Full Throttle, our new television program about transport, I know they're going to do a full program on this. And I think that'll be quite interesting.
I mean, I face a personal dilemma about it because my mother, who's in her 90s, in incredible health, she drives. And I know just how important it is for her to be able to just nip round to Tesco's or the post office or the doctors or the chemist. Most of her journeys are maybe, 2 miles maximum. She's not being distracted by having teenagers in the back of the car. She's not flicking around on her car radio. For heaven's sake, I don't think the car radio still works in her car. So there are less distractions. However, there have been some very sad high-profile cases recently where obviously there have been deaths because individuals have just not had decent enough eyesight. It is a real dilemma. As you say, I don't think we can solve it here, but my liberal anti-state control instincts tell me that the government should be light-handed in how they manage this. That said, there may be a lot of relatives around who don't want to have that conversation with mum or dad, and they would rather the state did it for them. It's a tough one, Lembit.
Yeah, I would say my mother drove well right up till her last days, until she became unable to be mobile. But the car was vital for her mobility right up to the last few years of her life. My late godfather, who just died last year, he was driving till he was 96. And then he started having accidents, but none of them were that serious. They were because he was driving slowly. In the end, he went up the wrong way, up a one-way street, and the police, and it was decided mutually probably best you don't drive anymore. They didn't punish him because it was clearly just the right thing to do. The punishment would have been ridiculous anyway.
What's your driving?
Cases? My mum died at 8. Pardon?
Well, I was going to ask you I've driven with you a couple of times. You do get distracted, Lemma. You're such a telephone person that you're constantly on the phone. I mean, I admit I'm a terrible driver. I've just been on a police training course because I was going to get some points for my driving. I'm not good at it, but I just wonder what you're like, Lembit.
I had that accident in 1984, 1st of January 1984, after having bragged that I hadn't had a single accident in 1983. It was hubris and attitude that brought me down. Rode off my parents' car, and I haven't driven fast since. I've broken the speed limit sometimes, but the reality is I don't get a bang out of really hammering the car. For me, it's just a vehicle. I don't actually really like driving, to be honest with you. I much rather take a train or a bus.
Don't say I don't get a bang out of hammering the car, because both of those sound like you're getting accidents happening to you all the time. But look, I think we have a short clip of what the government are suggesting to see us out on this item, don't we? Mouse.
Drivers over the age of 70 in the UK could be banned from roads if they fail compulsory eye tests under a planned shake-up of driving laws. The change is expected to be included in a new government road safety strategy in the autumn. The proposals could also include lowering the drink-drive limit in England and Wales to bring it in line with Scotland. Our transport correspondent, Simon Browning, has more.
Well, there we are. So it seems for once we actually were exactly right about the problem, and we're not so sure about the solution. Overall, as I say, I don't set myself up as a great driving instructor. For me, driving is just a utility. But when I was a lad, then it was a symbol of virility, symbol of my machismo, and that's why I kept falling off my motorbike. And to me, I
had a
suppose
motorbike. You were a motorbike.
I've been riding bikes since 1980.
With all like the leathers, the helmet, and all that kind of stuff.
Easy Tiger, yes, all of that. There's safety equipment, but the reason I don't do it much now is because it's a lot of hassle. It's a lot of hassle to pull that stuff on, and it is dangerous. I do think to myself, does my enjoyment of motorcycling justify the risk I would take if that knock on the door told my kids the worst news? So that's one reason why I balance that what's called actuarial risk, the pleasure versus the risk.
One thing I would say, I mean, I tried to teach my kids to drive. It was an absolute disaster. Both ended up in floods of tears after lesson 1. So never, ever try and teach a relative to drive, that's for sure. But the real issue the government needs to be tackling at the moment is the huge backlog of test delays. It is really hard to get a driving test. This started during COVID, and they don't seem to have got on top of the backlog. And if you were a 17, 18-year-old trying to get your test in place now, you can wait up to 7, 8, 9 months. And then the pressure on you to pass is huge, knowing you've got to wait maybe another 8 or 9 months until you get that test. So there are other issues, not just around 70-year-old driving, but actually improving access to getting those tests in the first place.
Right, my final plug for our new show. I'm not sure if the team can play the trailer for it, actually. Good opportunity to do so. Full Throttle. The Alliance of British Drivers is teaming up with Unprecedented.tv to do a brand new show. And this will be, I know, one of the subjects because we were talking with them very recently.
Should we get my 94-year-old mother on that show, Lembit? That would be hilarious.
Well,
Really
it's a
good
great
fun.
It's a great show. They do all transport.
Planes, Trains and Automobiles, also one of my favorite ever films. Absolutely love that film.
It is, and you can see how our production team got their inspiration there. Don't sue us, Steve Martin, please. And that's going to be gracing our station, well, from now on, really. We've already put the preview out on that one. So this is one of the subjects they'll cover there. I suppose I was quite aggressive to you at the beginning, so I relent. Do you want to go first with whatever you're watching on television to finish off?
I do, yeah. Thank you very much. You weren't that aggressive. People actually think that we don't like each other. You know, I've had people come back and say, "Do you really not like Lembit?" I said, "No, I love Lembit. I've known him for years."
What, in the same way that Trump loves Starmer? Do they talk? Oh, he's a very likable guy. Don't bully him. Very likable guy.
No, more in the same way that a dog likes a tree, I think. But anyway, favorite program for me at the moment is it's like, calm down, Lembit, calm down. It's a lovely program on Disney, and it's not a cartoon. It's actually all about Wrexham Football Club, and the backstory to this is that Wrexham was taken over 4 or 5 years ago by a couple of Hollywood movie stars. Ryan Reynolds is the most famous of them. And they've been pumping money into Wrexham. But more importantly, and what comes across in this program is, yes, there's been huge success on the pitch with back-to-back promotions. They're now in the Championship. But what this program shows is Wrexham, the city, and how they've invested in the city and the community. They're not just big Hollywood people coming in. They really care about what happens in the community. And you follow local stories of people in the community who part of the club. It's heartbreaking. It makes me cry. It makes me laugh. And of course, it's about football, which I love.
It is a good news story. I would tell you, I'll remind you once, one of my previous recommendations. Have you seen Ted Lasso? Have you watched Ted Lasso?
Yeah. Great. And again, football, funny, all of those tick so many boxes.
It becomes too woke for me at times, but the Ted Lasso main character is just very credible and very lovable. But today I have a different recommendation. I'm a bit of a night owl. I spend a lot of time working on the station, so I scan the internet to see what's on, and it's a film that you might not expect me to like.
A film? Hang on a minute. It's meant to be TV, Lambert. You can't just suddenly change it. If I knew it was film, I've got so many films I could have.
Well, I'm so sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry.
This is my segment, my little idea. It was always going to be about television. There you go. Come in and spoil it for everybody.
I watched it on a telly. I watched it on a television.
All right. Go on then.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll have to have a discussion. Let's not wash our dirty laundry. We've done so well. We've done most of the show without really falling out.
What's
this
the film?
Time, the film is, and you can have one the next time, Barbie. I watched Barbie. Have you seen it?
I'm gay. Of course I've seen it, for goodness sake.
It's nothing to do with being gay. There's nothing to do with being gay.
All the gays went to see Barbie and Oppenheimer, I'll have you know, as well.
That main character played by Margot Robbie, or the character played by Ryan Gosling, gay. None of it suggests that either of them is gay. There's no gayness at all. There's no gayness in it.
It's just a.
You're going to try to hijack this film as well.
Oh, all right, okay. I'm not saying it's a gay film. I'm just saying a lot of my gay friends, we all went to it together. Of course, we watched it.
Well, did you fancy Margot Robbie?
No. Will you stop? I didn't mean it like that. Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
You started it. I was talking about a nice, innocent family film that my kids could watch. There's no swearing in it, and there's nothing really lewd. There's nothing horrible, but it's got a deep content. Now, I was having a conversation with my friend about this, who said the same as you. Why do you want to watch that? What's wrong with Oppenheimer? I said, I watched Oppenheimer, but it's not exactly a laugh a minute, whereas this is, and it's very, very profound in places. And if you watch a lot of films and you know a lot of stuff, you will find all kinds of references in it, which some of which are true, including about the creator of the original Barbie. I'll tell you what, I was touched by it. I liked it. I shed a tear because there was a warmth of spirit in that film that you get with something like Toy Story. There's nothing to dislike about Barbie. Have you seen that film, Mark?
Of course I've seen Barbie. I've also seen Oppenheimer, and I know which one won the Oscar. I've also...
They both won Oscars, actually.
Oh.
Actually. But Oppenheimer won more Oscars because of the woke community. It's almost like you're sneering at a film that you yourself seem to like.
I'm not sneering at anything. Toy Story, talking of which, did I hear rumors that it's coming back again? Yeah. I think it is.
I would do it. I would do it. It's a great.
What movie? Woody? Sorry.
That was my nickname when I did The Jungle. Did you do The Jungle? No, I don't think you did. Yes, when I was in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, they called me Woody, and they kept singing "You Got a Friend in Me." Whenever they did my show reel, that's what they played. Because at that time I was a bit thinner.
Well, you've got a friend in me, Lembit, and I think probably on that note we should kiss and make up and say goodbye, don't you?
Right back at you. Thanks very much for watching. If you've got views about what we say, please share them with us and each other. If you like it, then like it in the social network kind of way. And also, please retweet it. What we do. We'll be back again pretty soon. Until then, big thanks to the team. Big thanks to you for watching. And I once again stress, get involved in the conversation, especially on X. I'm Lib Let Die.
And I'm Mark Oden.
And that was Live and Let Die. See you soon.